Welcome back, Stefan.
Hey, good to see you, Leighton, and hope you're doing well. It's been a while since I've been on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's been at least a year. So, yes, it's been a long time.
You've grown an impressive beard.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm using it to collect energy from the atmosphere.
That is what it does. I guess, yeah, I always think about long hair as doing that. But I suppose, if your beard gets big enough, you're pulling it in there too.
I mean, look how fluffy it is. It's just like it won't stand down. So, it's
Mm.
definitely doing something. I don't know what, but
Nice,
definitely
nice.
got more energy than I used to. So,
All right.
well, let's dive right in. Please bring us up to speed. There's all kinds of crazy shit going on.
Well, yeah, I, I, I like you guys because, well, we're all good people here, but also you reached out, you, Ken, the whole group reached out way back. Like, I really think there's something to,
In 900 feet, turn right on Dune Street.
Oh,
oh,
sorry.
I really think there's something to finding certain things early. Like, there's a lot of gems out there, and like I think society kind of just values those that are right there in the museum and they're big, bright, and shiny. But certainly, like the biggest gems are still like in the earth to be discovered. And so, I mean, Ken, someone found me. I think it was Ken probably when I was just a tiny channel, and then you guys invited me on, and now the channel's really been growing because of the intersection of all these things I talk about, which you guys do as well, um, but more biology focused. So it's really cool to see that, and then as a result, it's cool to touch back and touch base with you guys because it's kind of like full circle now.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, 100%. And I've been playing a lot more with crystals in my work as well. And it's interesting. Some unusual, kind of anomalies are happening when I'm playing with them. So I'll keep you posted because I'm really at the beginning. I built a grist mill to handle food waste and compost and stuff, and I've been playing with throwing different types of crystals into that grist while it's working.
Oh
So
wow.
I'll keep you posted when we get back together again in 6 months or a year. I'll bring you up to speed on what I'm finding out.
Well, I got one crystal story I can share right now. So we have a big raised bed back on my aunt's place, and we have these nettles that come up through it because they came off the hillside, and these things have insane root networks because they're really deep and then they go lateral. So it's like, oh my God, you're always pulling them coming up, but there's this network underneath that's like to get rid of it's impossible. So I wasn't going to be there all at the beginning of the planting season. I was there to plant stuff and then like time to leave. And I didn't want these nettles to just because they're so just they're so crazy. Yeah, it's like I didn't want them to immediately just come up and just like start putting shade on everything. Of course, they're prickly, so the other plants are like, we don't really like this. So I was pulling them, and the day before I left, I pulled as many as I could, and I put this really nice double terminated quartz crystal. It was like 2 points like this connected that I've been like working with for a few weeks. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this in the garden, and I'm gonna put it near kind of like the guardian of the garden, which is the big strawberry plant because it's been there the longest. And I also then I like put my hands on the ground. I was like, thistles, like we love you. We love that you're there with your root network and you're bringing up nutrients and water, but you just need to take it easy on setting up all these plants because now we have things here which have more elegant expressions of nature rather than just like spikes and then a flower for a little bit. So it's like you have plenty of other spots all around where you can do that because like it's just impossible to contain you completely, nor do we really want to. You are providing a lot of good stuff. But in this garden here, please just like cool it off and ideally like send your nutrients to everything else. And so I need to go back and I'm going back in like a couple weeks and I'll check it out. But I have received some photos. It's been months and basically it looks almost like I left it, which is wild. And it's I guess something about me speaking directly to the plant. I think also though that information got infused into the crystal, right? Because it has this coherent structure, so it's able to hold on to that energy. So the plant doesn't forget about it 2 minutes later. It's like, oh, what did he say? Whatever, go, go, go. So, um, and it's also actually, so now you can see why having these, this like everything for a reason. We had an extended drought there. Again, I'm not there right now, but it didn't rain for like 4 to 6 weeks. And I've specifically put in a bunch of Ugelkultur beds and made things very drought resistant, knowing that this is a possibility. And the water table is fairly shallow there, but still, you always want to be prepared. And those thistles, though, having such an extensive underground network are helping to bring that up for everything. So, I mean, my aunt and my dad have done a little bit of watering, but I mean, not really. They're not out there for 20 minutes every day spraying the hose. Yet, like they're pulling like the tomatoes are pumping right now, the peppers, there's cucumbers, there's a whole bunch of things that are like even without rain for 6 weeks are doing great. So yeah, there's something to all of that, and I like experimenting with little by little. So yeah, I'm interested definitely to hear about your crystal experiments and the composting and everything.
Yeah. So another thing, one of the people I work with had uh, tremors. His hands were like this all the time.
Mm.
It got so bad that he was struggling to type emails. And so I told him, I said, I don't know how open you are to this, but I think I have a way that will help you succumb or surpass the tremors. And so I took a crystal. I had a buddy of mine send me an entire box from Maine. It was so bad that the post office had to wrap it because the crystals just friggin' started falling out of the box, and it was heavy as hell. So I went through the whole box, and I connected with this one specific crystal, and I pulled it out. I brought it. I talked to it. I told it what I needed. I brought it to the ocean. I got some seawater, and then I went over to him where he was at his condominium with some of the other gang from the company that I'm with. I said, this is probably going to seem really weird to you, but if you go with it, it should help you quite a bit. So I took it, talked to it again. I put it in his hand. I held his hand, and I said, Ron, focus on the crystal. Just think only about the crystal and nothing else. And then I said a quick prayer about like, hey, please help him get past these tremors. It's affecting his ability to function as a human and do the job that he's so important in right now at this point in time. And I let go. And I said, now keep that crystal with you and keep it in your pocket. Just touch it, talk to it, keep it in your hand as much as you possibly can, from now on. And so he did. And then the next day I talked to him. I said, I know that was a little weird last night. I didn't mean to freak you out, but how's your hands doing? He goes, I'm not shaking at all. I'm like, see, I told you, dude. And, some of this can be written off as placebo. Because if you really believe something's going to work, it will work. Our bodies are wired that way. But sometimes it takes that little extra thing that can help them focus on to just reinforce that in their own mind. And to this day, his hands are not shaking anymore. I don't know how much he's playing with the crystal or whether he's keeping it in his pocket all the time or not. But it definitely fixed his shape. So I truly believe in crystals.
It is a catalyst, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's something like I don't know why people are so derisive of like the placebo effect. Because if it gets the job done and it's actually like no side effects, like even better. We should be celebrating the fact that our this thing exists in reality, like this ability exists, and yeah, whatever is the focus for that. And a crystal is a perfect focus for that because again, it has that coherent structure to it that can hold on to energy and information. And if it has a crystalline structure, it's piezoelectric. So yeah, like squeezing that crystal, like how much of a charge was emitted from that, it would be extremely subtle. So that's the other thing too. Like some people talk about piezoelectricity, like you squeeze in like a thunderbolt, it's like something's going to zap out of it. It's like, no, it's very subtle, but it doesn't mean it's not significant. And so, yeah, but it's then charged with that intention. And yeah, a lot of people swear by Vogel cut crystals, if you know those, because you can, it's a very specific cut and you can hold them in such a way that when you apply pressure, and ideally you're also like focusing some manifestation on it. I guess they're really powerful, and they cost a bunch of money, but people swear by them.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that people miss is recharging. So by putting
Mm.
it back in the salt water, you're recharging it, you're refreshing it, and anything that any negativity or bad energy that it absorbed, because they're really good at absorbing negative energy, gets dissipated in salt water. And this isn't my first experience playing with crystals. Pauline, my unfortunate partner who passed away, was very much into crystals. She was the one that taught me about putting intention into them, because that's what she did whenever she had a patient working with a patient who had bad energy or bad buildup of energy in them as a result of past experiences. That's what she would do. She would bless the crystal and then get it to them. So there's a lot more to it. I mean, look, what is everything electronic made with, right? It's silicon, is crystalline. So, and then there's been some really interesting new work done on nano crystals in cells. They're literally little crystals inside each one of our cells, and that's been documented. And it's kind of been like poo pooed on that. Oh, that's not going to have any effect on the cell. But how can you sit there and say, well, if there's a crystal in the cell, how does it not function? How is it not important? Why is it there? Right? And those are the questions you need to ask, not oh, well, that possibly can't be right. Cells are too perfect, man.
Yeah.
They're God's creation. How they function and how they interact, and their ability to transfer genetic material, or even biosymbiosis. I mean, it's just crazy when you get down to that.
What sort of what are these crystals? I've never heard of these crystals in cells. What,
Yep.
like, they have different compositions? Is it a specific
Well,
element or
they're
mineral?
nano, so they're very, very small. So
Yeah,
I don't think there's been more work done other than they identified that they are physically there.
these
Um,
microstructures.
right, and so they've identified the fact they're there. I don't believe anyone's taken it to the next level yet. I mean, this
Mm.
was a discovery this year, 2025. I read it in one of my papers that I read, my wife's papers,
Okay.
and it was a conversation I had with another friend of mine who's very spiritually connected. He's very much I want to say out of the box and in the realm. And he was like, "Yeah, I totally can see that being a very important functioning component of the cell. Again, to what degree? Well, hopefully, I'll keep my eyes open, and we'll see more information about it in the next year or so, as people really question or verify the fact that this was there.
And also, as we do more education on what a crystal is, I mean, it's really just anything with like a structure that's repeating, like a clear crystalline structure. So, I mean, most things in our body are crystalline to some degree. Like most of our connective tissues, bone, fascia, that's all crystalline. And the other interesting thing too, and I'm doing research into this now, and very few people talk about this because it's such a niche thing. But my mind just takes me all those like little corners. Is that in laboratory settings when they generate plasma, and it can be a composition of like carbon and nitrogen, and maybe like just like three maybe base elements, or maybe a few more, depends on what gases they're using. Especially the carbon based ones, will create nano, specifically at that same scale, nano diamonds and then also nano graphite crystals. And diamonds, of course, are crystals. So there's something about these plasma processes where you get um, ions highly charged that when they do recombine, they do so into coherent, orderly states rather than just in an amorphous state, which would, for reference for anybody, would be glass. Right here, you have a whole bunch of SiO2, and you heat it up, but then you cool it in such a way that it doesn't like slowly crystallize into quartz. This is just quenched down, so it's all jumbled up, and that's why it can break and not have any sort of like nice fracture to it. But what they see with these laboratory studies on plasma, dusty plasmas in particular, is that you're not generating amorphous materials. You're generating these highly structured materials, some of which have the most interesting material properties known, like diamonds and graphite. And those are just the carbon-based ones. I'm sure there's probably more studies on others, but I have to find them and people have to do them. But yeah, that nanostructure scale seems to be really interesting. It's kind of almost a bridge. Well, it is a bridge between what's happening at the cellular scale, and I think a lot of people can kind of feel from the cellular scale up to their human scale. Like there's a lot known there, so it's kind of easy to envision yourself as the cell. Because like we have all our organs, the cell has its organs, right? So that jump isn't hard, but that nanostructure scale seems to be a good spot to go from that to this, like that to molecules and cells and therefore humans, but then in the other direction to like quantum processes. And it builds that bridge all the way from like base reality up, or at least what we know as the deepest part. But it's endless. It's fractal. So.
Totally agreed, dude. Totally agreed. And that's another thing is that as we learn more and more about the quantum realms, the possibility of alternate realities or entities in different beings being present, but we can't see or feel them in our present state of consciousness, for lack of better words. Dude, with what's going on in the world, sometimes I swear I'm in the fucking matrix. I'm in a bubble somewhere that all this is not real. But I try to keep myself from diving down that realm too deep because it doesn't take you to a very nice place. But it is. It's like what we're doing, unlocking with like quantum computing, is just insane. The information that can be crunched in seconds is outstanding. Is unbelievable. It's almost hard to comprehend what's going on. Kind of like similarly, like, well, space is expanding. Well, it's expanding into what, right? Yeah. And now the whole Big Bang theory is coming apart at the seams, and it's always been like in Einstein's work. We're missing something. There's something missing here. Black matter, dark matter, whatever you want to call it, but. Anyway, we're getting off the track here. But
is there a track on this podcast?
Never.
That probably is the track to be off the track.
But I definitely wanted to hear more about all these astrology events that are occurring, and what do you call those? Not sunbursts.
Solar flares and coronal mass ejections.
Yeah. Can you kind of bring us up to speed on what you're seeing and finding and feeling?
Yeah. So we're in solar cycle 25 maximum, and that started. I guess you could even probably go back to like the middle of 2023, but really, definitely 2024 this year, and I think we're going to start really going down middle of next year. And there's some factors as to why. There's multiple, but we're at the second half of solar maximum right now. In general, it lasts about 3 years, though there is variability. And this is when the sun is more active. And you get a lot more explosions on the sun. It's literally, we have all these words and terms in like the astronomical or space weather community, like heliophysics and all this, and people stick to them. And so one that they use is like coronal mass ejection. And then everyone just uses the abbreviation of CME, and so CME, coronal mass ejection. And so when you're like new and wading into this, and everyone's using these abbreviations, you're like, what the heck is like? I have no concept. I have no idea what's happening. So I think it's really important to like to simplify it down. And so when you have a solar flare on the sun, and then a coronal mass ejection launches off, or there's these other processes. I mean, we can keep it really simple. It's like a big fucking explosion occurred on the sun, right? A really big explosion occurred. Sometimes you're just seeing the light from that because it didn't actually launch anything out. It's like the explosion kind of stayed contained to the surface. Other times, but still producing a big flash of light, like just boom, a bunch of light across all the different frequencies from infrared and even like microwave. You get these radio bursts from that, which do cut through Earth's atmosphere and hit the surface and then even penetrate down into the Earth. And then all the way up to gamma rays with really rare events from the sun, but usually X-rays, which is, like in a doctor's office, you get your body X-rayed. Very highly vibrational. But sometimes the explosion is powerful enough to actually dislodge a blob, effectively, of plasma, this fourth state of matter, where it's just all these ions floating around, but they have their own very complex structures that they form. They form crystalline shapes and structures in space, even though they're charged. But that's why, because they're positively charged, negatively charged. Really interesting things that we're just beginning to start to understand. Sometimes those get launched out. So that's the coronal mass ejection, or just like you call it, like a wave of plasma, or there's a variety of ways of saying it. But during solar maximum, we get a lot of those, and we had a big peak in activity last August in 2024, and now it seems we're ramping up to a second peak in activity. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this October, November, December. But I think it's going to be a second peak in activity. I think it's already ramping up. Like today, I just did a live stream, and our sunspots are right about 200 or so. They're like right under 200, but there's new ones growing every moment, and it can change really fast. So that's effectively what happened the past 36 hours. Is that we had some sunspots with things are going down, and then just a new burst of sunspots came out, and most of those came out exactly in the same angle direction as this comet that we have flying around in the inner solar system. And it's not flying around at some angle, like, all the sun and all the planets are on this plane, the ecliptic plane. It's not like it's flying up at this angle. It's also right on the ecliptic plane because it flew in with a very low inclination. So basically almost exactly parallel to that plane of all the stars and the sun and the planets. So I just think it's really wild that we get this comet, which has a super long tail of gas and plasma and dust and everything. And it's close. It's inside the orbit of Earth, and then on the sun, on that side, after this comet just is closest approach, now we get sunspots just basically growing super quickly right in line with that. And there's like an electric field gradient there, effectively. So mainstream space people don't talk about this for some reason. It's like heretical almost. But I'm just looking at this. I mean, I've done a lot of studying, of course, but I'm really just looking at this guys, 1 + 2 equals 3. It's not complicated. It's really just looking for patterns. It's really simple. And yeah, sometimes there's false patterns that get created, but when you see them over and over again, that's the thing. Then there's something up. And we saw this last October. We had a comet zoom right between the sun and the Earth. Shuchen Shan, that's the comet's name. And that was October 3rd, right around that time frame. It did that flyby early October last year. And then we had a bunch of solar flares launch out right towards the Earth afterwards. So, it's the timing's insane. It's perfect. So we kind of have all that set up for this fall. And it's a multitude of factors. You have this interstellar object coming in, if you've heard of it, 3i Atlas. I'm sure you have.
Yep.
We have that coming in. That's pretty strange.
I think it arrives late October, October 29th, and it comes in behind the sun, which is even weirder.
Yeah, it'll do a superior conjunction, so it'll be on the other side of the sun, so we won't be able to see it on October 21st. And in fact, that kind of time range, at least a week on either side, we're not seeing that thing at all. Probably more 2 weeks on either side. Like we're getting close to the point where it's going to disappear from view because the sun's just so bright. And then it does its perihelion, its closest approach to the sun on the 29th. So the end of October, going into November, looks like, and that's when, Halloween, the veil's thin. So like it's just looking really wild. Uh, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but we just got to make sure that we're feeling good and groovy and doing what we can to stay healthy, calm, really, how are we, like, what are our mental processes and not letting us get carried away with things. I think that's important.
Stay focused.
Yeah. Keep working with the crystals and the compost, keep focus on some of these more mundane matters and do what you can to make the world a better place. And then the other stuff, I think those energies go in and help you rather than you being like worried about this alien story that's going around. And I don't know, maybe there's going to be ships that fly out off of this thing, but I would not bet on it. I'm not betting anything on that. So,
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a lot of anomalies to it that aren't typical with any kind of inner space, call it a rock, light and changing trajectory and stuff like that. But you're right. It's again, at the end of the day, what's going to happen is going to happen. So you might as well just enjoy your life and stay focused on the things that keep you healthy mentally and physically.
yeah, for you, it's like if they show up and like we're going to beam you up, it's like, can I bring my dog? If I can do that, I'm fine. So,
Can I have plus one?
yeah. Is there room on this ship for like at least like one suitcase of stuff? Like, what's the deal here? So,
Cool. Well, I appreciate that understanding. And to be honest with you, I had never put together the fact that when comets come by and they go in between Earth and the sun, that there's these phenomenon that are occurring on the sun after the fact. That's really interesting. Is there more that you can expand on that?
yeah, it's not every time, but it's more often than not. I mean, if someone wanted to take the time, they could do a proper analysis, and I would bet that would really show a connection. I mean, people have already done some research on this, but I just basically keep my eyes open. Since I started the channel, I've kept my eyes open to as much as I can, and I have to thank my community for always sending me new little things. Um, so a lot of them are just kind of wild and rabbit holes, but some of them are like they heard about the breaking news immediately, send it my way, so I'm 3 hours ahead of everyone else effectively. Um, and just when you spend time in that space with like really no preconceptions, just reading a lot of research, but just with like a light hold on everything, right? You're not, I'm not fully sold on anything. Then these patterns start to emerge because there's a lot of programming. There's programming from the NASA side, because, like, for reference, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was a lot of debate about Big Bang and the creation of the universe, and they were opposing ideas. And Hans Alvin was one of the guys spearheading a different view of cosmology based on annihilation. So you have matter and antimatter because we have these energetic processes that we observe, and it's like, well, how are they so energetic? And so he was like, well, annihilation would fit the bill. It's just, how is annihilation, this collision between matter and antimatter, how's it playing out? Because we're only seeing the gamma rays effectively, being those most highly vibrational rays, and the cosmic particles. We're observing those, but in terms of getting high depth imagery at some of these more micro scales where annihilation actually is happening, let's say, we don't have that. So he was looking at from that perspective of like that would solve this energy problem, whereas in general, mainstream flipped over to like the black hole and like dark energy and dark matter, and those are all kind of like still unproven. And especially dark matter and dark energy. I mean, they did release like a photograph now, some image capture of a black hole, but I'm still not sold on black holes, so I need to do more research. I'll just say that. But there was a lot of competing ideas back in that time frame, and then uh, kind of one group won out. And so now a lot of the internet is built with that information. This is just some one niche, but you can expand this out to all the things, right? So if you go online and you're like learning about coronal mass ejections and all this stuff, you're basically getting that feed of data. And there's a lot of good stuff there. I mean, we wouldn't be sending probes out to Jupiter and Saturn and all over the solar system if like there wasn't something to it. But it's not 100% the absolute truth given by God, everything all comprehensive, done. That's it. It's got holes, and it's also very it doesn't incorporate plasma all that much like with the sun it does, because to not talk about plasma with the sun, you just have to be absolutely insane. But like with these comets, you'll notice all these astronomers, they only talk about ice, gas, and dust. And they never talk about plasma. And the moment you're in space and there's a big honking star right there pumping out light, you're going to have plasma. So why are you talking about ice, gas, and dust when immediately you have to introduce plasma as a fourth? And well, the reason why is because it gets really complex. And most science nowadays is based on modeling. So you figure out your base parameters, you create a model, then you see the different outputs. So a lot of papers nowadays will be like simulations of a solar wind impact under this sort of solar sector regime. And they'll like model what the solar wind parameters will be, and then they'll sweep it by this model of Earth's magnetic field, and they'll see, oh, well, we see with this sort of solar wind configuration, Earth's magnetic field has this sort of storm. But it's all hypothetical and not, obviously it's not going to be comprehensive to what actually exists, because it's just a distillation of what may or may not be. I mean, the math that they use may not even be that accurate. It may be off of maybe it's just like not up to date. And math is not reality. Math is just like trying to understand reality. But math is not the universe. Consciousness is more than math. So that's kind of the problem with modern science. And so the moment you introduce plasma, to get back to that, the moment you introduce plasma into that gas, dust, and ice equation, it gets super complex, effectively so complex you can't model it anymore. And now it's like, well, we're back to square one. So we'll just kind of like collectively ignore that so we can keep getting our funding, and we can keep spinning up these stupid papers that don't really teach you anything, and we're just spinning our wheels. Meanwhile, like maybe the fourth interstellar object heads right towards us. Like we don't want that, but that's kind of the state of science right now in many aspects, and it's much more complex than that. So these comets do have plasma, and then they get close to the sun. Plasma has very powerful electric fields and magnetic fields. And if you have the sun, which is the biggest magnetic field and electric field in the solar system, you're now going to have a gradient between them, because what's nearby? There's nothing nearby, unless maybe one of the planets is nearby. Planets aren't nearby, there's nothing nearby. So it naturally will create a gradient that's stronger than the background gradient. And so you're going to have some flow of energy. Then the question is that flow of energy, let's say between the comet and the sun, significant in such a way that it can trigger activity in one or the other? Because what happened with this Swan comet, which I just covered, is that it had an outburst, and then we had this solar flare in line with it that launched this wave of plasma, this coronal mass ejection towards it, and then just 24 hours after that, these sunspots started growing. So it's a very clear progression. And
so,
my mind.
One of the things that I spent a minute on back many years ago was nebulas. Like, and again, the science says, oh, well, there's this dust and particles, and all of a sudden there's gravity. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You can't sit there and say that the dust and the water and all these things come together and create gravity when In fact, once they come together, there's a gravitational force. But I think plasma is that missing piece, that there's something more that's happening in the nebula to create these stars than just those three simple elements, like you said. And so I guess the question bears that, now that we have been able to create plasma in controlled environments, why aren't we studying the formation of the sun?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this guy in particular, Hans Alvin, did a lot of groundbreaking thought experimentation backed up with physics from laboratory experiments and also in situ measurements and observations in Earth's magnetic field and some probes in the solar system back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I mean, this guy was groundbreaking. But he was a little prickly. So I think that, sometimes prickly people, because people don't like to be wrong. So when someone comes out and they are right, and then the other group is wrong, and then they're prickly to it, and they're not like at all kind of compromising and being like, great work, even though this is an issue, like, we can work together. Like, I think maybe he was a little prickly. He's gone now. I never met him, of course, but that I think kind of pushed people away. Maybe I don't know what the deal is. I guess it all boils down to ego or something. But he developed really good models that helped to basically recreate the solar system and did it accurately. And so there's a certain velocity for different ions for different elements or molecules that if they're traveling, they will spontaneously ionize because that kinetic energy will then get turned into ionization. It's just like they're traveling so fast, there's a default level of kinetic energy there that the thermal energy goes up and boom, like now you have an ion pair. And so if you have this big cloud, this molecular or this like protoplanetary, protostellar cloud, you're going to have certain things condensing out, and then the ones that aren't condensing out are going to be the ones that are already ionized, such that they're able to resist the force of gravity. Because you are going to get stuff accumulating to the center. Gravity is still important. The other thing, the flip side, is that a lot of these plasma people, they're like talk about gravity like it means nothing. It's like, well, jump off of a 10-story building, bro. Right. I don't know. It's really simple, but gravity is really important because it also like electromagnetism is interesting because you can like block it in some ways. Like there's a field, and let's say like 5G. You put up a sheet of like lead, it's not cutting through that. Right? It needs certain properties to cut. But gravity, though, like can cut through these things. Like we really don't have a way to stop the force of gravity. But on the flip, electromagnetic processes, one way of measuring them is that they are 10 to 36 times more powerful than gravity. So that's 10 and 36 zeros. Like it's a lot. So if there is an electric and magnetic field that's forming, which there undoubtedly is because we have it now, so it's going to exist back then. It's probably actually going to be more powerful but chaotic and rugged, maybe raw back then. Gravity will pull what's not ionized and what's still neutral to it, because if it's neutral, it's not interacting with the electromagnetic field directly. But the moment something's ionized, 10 to the 36 zeros, gravity is going to be insignificant effectively. And so it's going to stop and then hold in place because now it's hitting some magnetic field boundary layer or something. And so there's multiple models of how the universe got created. I think blending the gravity model and the plasma model is kind of key. Like people have attacked it from both angles. But as a result of some of these things already being ionized at further reaches, then the planets eventually do coalesce from that. And so it's kind of an interesting thing that the sun and this idea was the accumulation of all the stuff that was the least ionized and energized at the beginning, whereas the planets originally were the most energetic at the beginning of the creation of our solar system. That's one idea. It's one that resonates with me. But yeah, the plasma processes are really interesting. Another interesting thing to throw out is that there is this electric field that spirals in radially, this electric current. So we think of the solar wind as pushing out. So it'll first flow by Mercury, then Venus, then Earth, and goes out to Jupiter and beyond. But there's also this inwardly flowing radial electric current. And we also see that there's, well, I'm not sure if we've seen it, but we have good observational evidence from galactic scales and interstellar scales that we'd also have this electric current flowing through the poles of the sun, going way out to the edge of our solar system, and then going back in through that radial current. But if that's the case, then this current is flowing through Pluto and then Neptune and then Uranus, and it's going the opposite way. And so astrology knows that these distant dwarf planets in the outer gas giants exert significant effects on us here on Earth. And I think it goes beyond gravity and electromagnetism. But if we just cap it there, it's like, well, like here's one way how, because you do have this electric current flowing in from the outer reaches inwards, and if you have electric current, well, you can put a signal in there, and now you have information, and now you can trigger changes depending on how strong it is and if it's a significant change biologically, let's say, or consciously or whatever. But it goes beyond that. But I mean, there's just it's like all connected, and in my mind, you can only start making sense of it in like a holistic way that feels semi-comprehensive when you look at plasma. You have to look at it. If you don't, then you're stuck with like the world is devoid of meaning. I'm gonna die, and then that's it. And well, I have no free will, and might as well just be a slave to the elites. It's like, why would you want to live this reality? So I don't really get it.
Well, so my thought is that it's to be a slave to elites is both programming and diet and exposure to metals. So you basically turn the person into it. So that's my view of it. Because as I drive around, I see these people that are just complete drums. They don't even know anything's going on around them. They just stare forward, and they tend to go really fast and really slow, really fast and really slow. So not much going on up there. They're not even paying attention. But something
Yeah.
I do want to talk about is that this has always bugged me, and I think you just answered it. Because if you have energy, say magnetism pushing you out, and an energy force pulling you back, then you get locked into a place where you can't go either way, right? So when that comet or meteorite hit the planet and wiped the dinosaurs out, right?
Mm.
That should have knocked us the fuck out of our home. The size of the crater, the amount of energy released planet wide, right? So you shift all that water away from that area. You've displaced the ability for something to would wobble, right? It would wobble because you pushed all this shit away from that one spot. So therefore, that weight had to go somewhere. And I've always wondered, like, well, why the hell didn't we just get knocked out of our orbit at that point? Or then you get into the moon theory, like the moon wasn't there back in the, BC, way back in the Sumerians talked about there was no moon, and then the moon appeared, and then we had regular day and nights. So, I mean, there's a lot of creepy shit that we still, and I don't want to say creepy, I want to say deep things that we still have not unlocked. But, I think maybe the case that those opposing forces, if you state it that way, then that would say, okay, no matter how hard you whack the Earth, it ain't going anywhere. It's trapped in between these two forces. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, in general, I would say that I think evolution, I think the history and the evolution of our solar system is much more dynamic, like much, much, much more dynamic and interesting than our current like model of understanding that you can get in some sort of, history of the solar system book, where it's like kind of the planets formed and that's it. 4 billion years later, they've been doing their thing. Like, I think there's a lot more room for dynamicism, and again, it's a lot of this is built off of models, built off of models, built off of models. But you can just simply kind of run through some like thought experiments in your head, especially under like the right conditions. Like maybe take a entheogen, you're outside looking up at the night sky, and all of a sudden, like the universe starts speaking to you, and um, like is the solar system undergoing an evolution? Like right now, we have Mercury, we have Venus, Earth, and Mars. And then you also have the outer gas giants: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. We'll just keep at those eight. But I mean, is there like how is this unfolding? We have the mythology of the gods behind the gas giants, and how, like, for example, Uranus used to be the king of the pantheon, and then it was Kronos or Saturn, and then it was Zeus, Jupiter. So like, did the planets themselves used to, is that mythology reflective of how those planets used to have more dominant roles in the solar system than they do now? Because right now Jupiter really is like the master conductor of the solar system. It's in between the inner planets and the outer planets. It's close to the sun, and it's the most massive planet. But it's not so far away. It's not so close to the sun that it can't also communicate and interact with subtly and gravitationally, all this stuff, with, let's say, like Neptune, right? And yeah, Neptune will have a bigger influence, or Uranus will have a bigger influence over Neptune because it's at 20 AU, Neptune's at 30. But also, Jupiter's always close to the sun. So when Neptune and Uranus are on opposite sides, Jupiter's always going to be closer. So like Jupiter's in this position where it's like the conductor kind of everything, from a non-sun perspective. But maybe at one point that was Saturn. Does that mean that the orbits were different? I don't know. Or like, did Jupiter somehow acquire a bunch of mass? And these are all just ideas. But if this planet has like a rocky core, maybe it once didn't have all this extra stuff there, and then through some dynamic event, it was able to acquire and hold on to that. Why does Saturn still have rings? Like the rings of Saturn are pretty bizarre. Why does it still have them? Do they serve some purpose for the future? Is like, could they like maybe undergo some sort of like nova blast off event if like a big wave of galactic energy passes through? How would that change the solar system? Right? Because these are small particles, nanoparticles and stuff. They can ionize. If they ionize, all of a sudden they're not in Saturn's gravitational influence really anymore. It's now all about the magnetic fields and the electric fields. So
So
like,
if you think about it, you might be onto something there because maybe they were reversed. Maybe at one time Jupiter had rings, and those rings fell to the surface and expanded the planet, and then it became more dominant, right? And but you're right. Like, what is the function of the rings? And where the fuck did the asteroid belt come from?
yeah.
Right? Why is it there? Right?
Yeah, there's just a bunch of weird stuff that you can start thinking about, and I'm just not sold. Like, I'm just not going to take the like everything we know everything pill, because that just is obviously not true. So that means that the whole universe now is an open playground of exploration and curiosity. And like the inner solar system, let's say, uh, Earth is the heavyweight. Earth is the big daddy, because we have the most mass. We have by far the strongest magnetic field. Venus doesn't have one. Mars does not have one. Mars is tinier than Earth. Venus is about the same mass and size. It is closer to the sun. So in terms of gravity, Venus has a more dominant position in terms of influencing the sun that way. Mercury has a magnetic field. It's super tiny. It's the closest, so it does have special characteristics. But like, if there was this dynamic evolution unfolding, Venus seems to be kind of like in a static state. Mars seems to be in a fairly static state. What would happen if the two of them like somehow combined? Like there was some event that caused, let's say, Mars to dislodge in its orbit and then fly into Venus. Like that could perhaps like totally transform the dynamic of the inner solar system, such that now this new planet that emerges could maybe be host for life, and maybe it's now in the Goldilocks zone and Earth gets pushed out further. Like I don't know the answer, but I I personally believe that these planets, and in fact everything, has consciousness, and that maybe at some point there may want to be a union of consciousness, and we have the archetype of Mars and Venus being the lovers. So it's just an idea, but how would that change the solar system? You know, there are these rogue agents like these interstellar objects that could facilitate that. You could get a big enough hit that it throws it off its orbit, and maybe it's like it's all predestined, and then boom, we get a perfect hit right into Venus because of the gravity well, and the also just to kind of conclude, like all the planets are perfectly balanced gravitationally at
Right?
all moments in time,
It-
um, which is incredible. So when you look at the solar system, and they all have their inclinations too. So one's swinging up, and if you take the net aggregate of all of them, everything's perfectly balanced at every single moment. So my feeling is that if there was to be some sort of kind of perturber to the system, and let's just run with this Mars Venus idea, I don't think that it means that all of a sudden everything just shoots off. I like just one little perturbation to orbits means that they all just fly off. I think that the system would be able to rebalance, but with new orbits and in new positions. Um, and if you include that now kind of in your conception of how the universe maybe evolved or the solar system evolved, now it opens up the doors a lot, because the current idea is that like one little perturbation and everything just like flies off the sun like crazy. It's like, well, it's perfectly balanced, but I don't think it's about to do that. I don't think it's about to
Well,
explode the moment you touch it.
we've already disproved that when that meteorite hit the Earth, right? That
Yep.
would have been something that would have allowed that everything to fly off into space. But there's another theory that I've kicked around, and that is, well, we know what happens to a sun as it starts to fail. It goes red giant, and or red giant, white dwarf, or sometimes just white dwarf. It loses all its energy. So that being said, the evolution of the sun, our sun, could have been expanding out, which created the Goldilocks zone for us now. Maybe it creates the Goldilocks for another planet, or maybe even the outer rim of planets. Once it gets so big, maybe it's happening just so slow that in our lifetime, or while the humanity and all the animals and creation lived on the planet, that it pushed in, but it's still moving out, but just at such a slow pace. Like, I mean, a billion years is a long fucking time, right?
Oh, hey guys, I hate to do it, but Leighton, you have an appointment that you have to go to, so we've only got 2 minutes left, guys. So I think I'm gonna have to stop you there on that one, Leighton.
So you're coming back when?
Yeah, well, no, you're absolutely right, though. Like, what happened 10,000 years ago, we only have geologic evidence of. And we have one
Yeah.
plant that we can look at. We can look at all the plants, but we have like basically one plant that we can look at indirectly for evidence of what was happening in our solar system. So we don't know. We just don't know.
And let's face it, God scale is like, so slow that we'll never know, right? Maybe 1,000, 1,500, 20,000 generations from now we'll know, but that's if we didn't wipe ourselves off the planet by then.
Yeah.
In the life of a mountain, we are here but a moment, my friend.
All right, I'm gonna sign off. Thank you, Ken, for the reminder, brother. You got to come back on. We got to chop it up again. I love where you go. Your brain works amazing. So let's do it again soon.
Awesome. Yeah, pleasure talking. We will do it again for sure.
All right, thank you so
All right.
much. Thanks
Bye,
always,
Leighton.
Ken, for all your work, my friend.
Okay.
All right,
Okay,
bye.
guys. We'll have Stefan back on, and we can have more conversations, and maybe Stefan can come on and do a Q&A with the chat one of these days. We'll have to see what happens. But Stefan, thank you so much for bringing this information to a lot of people. If you guys have not checked out Stefan's YouTube channel, he does a lot of videos on what's happening in our solar system, in our planet. I don't know if you do a lot of stuff on your wild, free, organic anymore, but there's a lot of useful information that is on there, guys. So check out these things. Learn, learn, learn. The more voices you listen to, the more understanding you're going to have.
Yeah, thank you, Ken, for having me on, and we'll have to figure out maybe you could host some sort of interesting roundtable where we get like a few people and we get like maybe 4 people up on the screen. That could be cool. We'll talk to you about that.
Yeah,
You have a good place to host
the
that.
gentleman that you had on talking about plasma, I've got his book. I've been scanning through it, but plasma is a core component of our universe, our very existence, and that's one of the things that's really been missing from these equations. And I would love to have that on the channel. So yeah, we'll definitely have to work on that.
Okay, sounds good.
But guys, we'll end the live stream, and Stefan and I will talk in the back end about all kinds of stuff. So have a great day. Don't forget, we have Andy Lopez and myself on Wednesday, still going over his book. So we'll see you guys on Wednesday.